Are you looking to write an amazing college essay and wondering what topics you should avoid? If so, in this video, I'm going to go over some of the #1 topics that you should be avoiding if you're writing a college essay. My name is Brooke. I'm an independent college consultant. I've been doing this for over a decade and a half. I have coached students into schools like Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, Yale, MIT, you name it, on down the line. So no matter where you want to end up, hopefully some of my insights are going to help you put your best self on paper. If you need more help with the college admissions process, be sure to check out SupertutorTV.com, where we've got a couple of courses for the SAT and the ACT. I also have a couple of math books for the ACT math section you can find on Amazon.com. Finally, you can subscribe to our channel here on YouTube and our mailing list, SupertutorTV.com/subscribe. TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, follow us. Okay, cool. Let's get started. My #1 first tip is avoid gross out topics. I once read an essay about someone's diarrhea. I did not want to read that essay. I also once read an essay on somebody who was afraid of vomiting, and there were multiple scenes of people vomiting, and she learned over time to get used to the vomiting. Don't write about vomiting over and over again. Now, that's not to say that you can't write about any bodily fluids at any time. You've got to ask yourself, how does my reader feel when they read my essay, right? What's the net impact? And that's what you have to ask. And the best way to approach a risky topic, and gross topics are certainly risky, if not just completely things you should totally avoid, is to have multiple people read it, and they will tell you if it grosses them out, and you will very quickly realize, I probably shouldn't write my essay about this. Are there any times when it's appropriate to talk about bodily fluids? Maybe. I'm going to give you some examples. I have read a wonderful college essay on owl pellets and dissecting owl pellets. That was lovely. I also read another one on scat analysis about sort of zoology, biology interested student who was analyzing scat. So if you're talking about it in a scientific kind of context or in the context of an internship or something like that, and you want to talk about poop, okay. But if it's going to gross me out, and this is a real question, you have to ask yourself, does your essay gross people out? It's an experience, and it's an emotional experience to read your college essays. And if that emotional experience is negative for your reader, you're not doing yourself any favors. Cool? Great. Okay, #2 is unresolved weaknesses. One thing that sometimes some of my students do, which isn't a very good habit, is they write about a weakness that isn't resolved. So I'm making this kind of general. The #1 unresolved weakness that I do sometimes see students write about because they feel like they have to is mental illness or mental health issues or challenges. If you have an unresolved issue, if you have OCD and you still really struggle with it and you're really not over it in any way, it might not be the best thing to write about. Does that mean you should never be weak in your college essays? No, absolutely not. I want to see some vulnerability somewhere. I want to know that you're human in your college essays, but I don't want unresolved weaknesses. I don't want you to just show me your weaknesses, not resolve them, and then leave me with this impression that you're bad at science or that you have an eating disorder and you've never been able to overcome it. I don't want to know about those things. And you're not a bad person for hiding them if you have those issues. It's okay. It's okay. We all have issues in life and we're all working to overcome them. But if you haven't overcome them yet, they're not yet fodder for your college essay. Now, if in a year you overcome them, great. Then you can maybe write about them, but be careful. Again, riskiest essay topics. But please don't tell me about unresolved weaknesses that you just dangle in front of me and make me feel awkward about. Cool? Great. Okay. Third on my list is what I call typical conflicts with predictable endings. What are typical conflicts with predictable endings? That sounds kind of vague. Well, those are stories where they're very common stories that people write about in college essays, and they have very common themes and trajectories. For example, I was getting a B in calculus, but then I studied and I got an A. It could be I immigrated to the United States when I was 9. It was hard because I had to be put in an English language learner class and I didn't know any English, but over time I grew and I learned English, and now I have lots of friends and I feel more confident. It could be I moved and it was hard to make friends, but I made friends and it was great. It could be I went mountain climbing and it was hard, but then, I got through the experience and it taught me that I should keep going when things are hard. Okay? Whatever is a typical conflict and has a typical resolution is not going to be that interesting. So how do you avoid the typical conflict story? How do you write something that is interesting? Instead, I want you to find the irony. I'm not saying you can't write about grades. I'm not saying you can't write about immigration. I'm not saying you can't write about moving. All of those could be topics you can write about, but I want you to write about them in an uncommon way if you're going to do that. I want you to put some irony, some spin. You need to find the irony. You need to find the angle that's not what everybody else is writing. For example, last year I had a student who got into some great schools, and he wrote an essay where he flipped on its head kind of the sports essay. where instead of writing, I, did a sport and I excelled and then, yay, we won, he wrote about, how he had had some struggles with his sport, how he sort of plateaued for a while and then he started getting better again. But through this process, he started to question, what's the value of sports anyway, right? And he started to realize that the experiences that he had volunteering were meaningful to him. And he questioned the idea of what is excellence and why do we love excellence, right? And at the same time, discussed the idea of what value does an individual athlete add to the world, right? If you're a tennis player and you win a tennis match, how have you made the world any better? Have you made the world any better, right? Why do we care? But he asked real questions and said, is this useless? Is it worthless? Or maybe there is some worth. And he found some worth here, but he also found some worth over here, and he found some worth beyond what he does, right? Is it worthwhile only because I like doing it? Or is there some sort of greater meaning or greater power behind it? If so, what is it, right? So asking these kind of questions and then coming to answers, that's an atypical way to deal with a sports narrative, rather than saying, I played a sport, I got injured, I got over the injury, right? To question the value of sports. It's more interesting. So that's what I want you to do. Find a more interesting angle if you are going to write about a typical idea, okay? Next up, negative feelings towards school. So sometimes what happens occasionally, and it doesn't happen very often, but every year or two I get like one kid who writes an essay, and somewhere in their essay laced in, and it sometimes isn't even the main topic of the essay, but it laces itself in somehow, is this idea that the student has negative feelings towards school. And this is especially true if it's unresolved, but even if like freshman year you were like, I didn't really care about school and I would rather hang out with my friends. If I'm like a competitive college or university, I don't want to know that as a sophomore you didn't give a care about school. Like, I really kind of don't want to know that, even if it's true. So just be careful about dissing school or academics. That can be really negative. The other thing too is talking too much about parental pressure to do academics and not owning it yourself. Sometimes students talk about how, oh, my mom makes me study for the SAT so much, or they talk self-reflexively about the college admissions process and how annoying it is, things like that too. Anything that looks down negatively on colleges or their admissions processes or anything like that, that's just really dangerous kind of information to talk about. So avoid it. Awesome. Okay, next on my list is your boyfriend or girlfriend. I don't want to see them in your college essay. Do I really have to explain this? And finally on my list is what I call tales of privilege. Another category of essay that sometimes emerges among students that I work with is what I would call tales of privilege, because what I get out of the essay by the end of the essay is something that just really reeks of privilege. And I can't give you like one specific essay that you absolutely have to avoid. And that doesn't mean you can never talk about experiences that are in some way related to your privilege. You will probably anyway. But you've got to be kind of careful. It's not that impressive if you fundraise $100,000 if you say you emailed 5 of your parents' friends and they sent you big fat checks. It's nice that you did that, but I think that's more proof of how rich your parents' friends are than how you fought for social justice. Anything that makes you sound rich and privileged and then you talk about hardship is also problematic. I once had a student talk about going on a really difficult hike. The hike was really challenging, but because of the location of the hike and the uniqueness of the experience, it was obviously a trip that probably cost tens of thousands of dollars. And the way it was written, it was like, oh my gosh, you guys must be really loaded. So you've just got to be careful about tales of privilege and temper that privilege, and you don't want to seem too privileged. And finally, you just want to make sure that whatever your essay is saying, that it's putting you in a good light. Finally, number 7 isn't really necessarily an essay topic to avoid, but it's sort of a recap of all the kind of essay topics you want to avoid, which is the idea that you want to avoid any essay that doesn't say something positive about you. And this is the question that I want you to ask no matter what topic you've chosen for your essay. After you write your first draft, I want you to go through it and ask yourself line after line, what does this say about me? And ask yourself, does what it says about me, what conclusion do I make? If I read the sentence, what would I think about me from reading that sentence? And is that something good about me? Or does that build toward a narrative that's good about me? And is it something that a college would sit there and look at it and say, hey, I want this kid at my school, right? And if at the end of the essay, you could say, this says something good about me, or it shows that I've overcome this, or, it showed that, I was a little bit weak there, but here's how I bounced back. Here's how I'm gritty. Here's how I have resilience. And it shows that. And this shows that, all the better. And then also make that explicit. Make what it shows about you explicit, as you revise your essay. And then you're going to have an essay worthy of your college application, and that can show all the awesomeness that you have to offer the world, because I know you have some in you. I don't care who you are. You have a little bit of awesomeness in you, and hopefully you can get some of it on the page. That's all I've got for today. I hope you guys like this video. If so, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet. We have lots more tips for you. Good luck writing your essay. I hope it goes well. You got this. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.